There are wounds you can't see, and they're the ones that bleed the longest. They didn't break your bones. They broke your trust. And now you're left standing there holding the shards of a connection that never truly valued you. But here's the brutal truth. You can't heal in the same place that hurt you. And you'll never find peace if you're still trying to prove something to someone who didn't care when they had the chance. This video isn't about revenge. It's not about how to make them suffer. It's about how to rise with quiet strength, emotional intelligence, and unshakable inner peace. Because the Stoics never taught us to escape pain. They taught us how to endure it with dignity, how to protect our soul when the world turns cruel, and how to turn wounds into wisdom without ever lifting a sword. So if you've ever been used, lied to, betrayed, ignored, gaslit, or made to feel like you were the problem, stay. This isn't just a lesson. It's your liberation. Let's begin. There's a moment right after the pain hits when your mind screams for justice. You replay every word, every lie, every passive-aggressive silence. You imagine the perfect comeback, the perfect confrontation, the perfect moment where they finally understand how deeply they've hurt you. But here's the truth. That Stoicism teaches us. You don't owe them a war. You owe yourself peace. Because when someone hurts you, your first instinct is to make them feel what you felt to balance the emotional equation. But in doing so, you trade one wound for another. You give away your peace to reclaim a pride that should have never been in their hands. The Stoic path begins with control of you, not them. Epictetus once said, "We suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgment about them." You were betrayed. Yes, that happened, but now you're reliving it every morning, carrying it into every conversation, letting it poison your thoughts and sabotage your sleep. That's not their doing anymore. That's yours. The Stoic path begins where blame ends. You cannot control how they treated you. You cannot force an apology. You cannot reverse their betrayal. But what you can do is control what happens next. And what happens next defines you.
What is peace?
Really, peace is not pretending that nothing happened. It's not smiling when your heart aches. It's not forgiveness wrapped in forced kindness. Peace is power. It's the quiet conviction that you will no longer let their behavior dictate your emotional weather. You protect your peace, not by pushing people away with rage, but by deciding that they no longer have emotional access to your mind. Not everyone who hurt you deserves a reaction. Some people just deserve distance and silence. That's not avoidance. It's emotional discipline. The illusion of winning an emotional battle. Let's be brutally honest. There's no winning when you fight someone who doesn't care. You think if you argue long enough, loud enough, clever enough, they'll finally realize what they've done. They won't. Why? Because they never saw the truth the way you did. Their actions weren't accidental. The silence wasn't forgetfulness. The manipulation wasn't confusion. It was calculated disregard. You don't win by exposing them. You win by evolving so far beyond their emotional reach that they can't even find the version of you they once hurt. This isn't cowardice. It's clarity. Emotional intelligence means choosing healing over hostility. Not because they deserve it, but because you do. Your energy is sacred. Imagine this. You only have 100 units of energy each day. Every time you think about them, you lose the S. Every time you argue in your head, another 10. Every time you wonder if they miss you, another 10. And by noon, you've spent 80 units on someone who isn't even thinking about you. How do you build a strong life on that? Your energy is sacred. Protect it like a monk protects silence. It's not your job to fix someone who broke you. It's your job to rebuild yourself in a way they can never break again. This is the way of the Stoic. Quiet strength, inner discipline, relentless self-respect. The victory they'll never understand. When you don't fight back, they'll call you cold. When you go silent, they'll say, "You've changed." When you walk away, they'll say, "You gave up." Let them. Your victory is invisible to them because they were never meant to understand your journey. You're not healing to prove a point. You're healing to reclaim your life. The greatest revenge, it's not a clapback. It's not a public breakdown. It's not a post they'll accidentally stumble across. It's peace. Real, undisturbed, unbothered peace. This is what they'll never expect. That you didn't need to burn the bridge because you built a whole new life without it. There's something most people never learn until it's too late. Pain is part of life. Suffering is a choice. You can't outrun heartbreak. You can't meditate betrayal out of existence. You can't positive vibe your way around being lied to, manipulated, or used. Even the greatest Stoics felt pain. Marcus Aurelius buried 8 of his children. Epictetus was a slave with a crippled body. Seneca was exiled, framed, and forced to take his own life. Yet what made them extraordinary wasn't the pain they endured. It was what they chose to do with it. Emotional intelligence is not emotional suppression. People often misunderstand Stoicism as emotional numbness. They think being strong means not feeling. But true Stoicism and true emotional intelligence is not about denying pain. It's about facing it without letting it destroy you. When someone hurts you, pain knocks at your door. That's natural. That's inevitable. It's your body's way of saying something is not right. But suffering the prolonged mental anguish, the spiraling stories, the obsessive replaying of events, that's not them. That's you not letting go. And it's not your fault. No one taught you how. But now you have a choice. You can either let the wound become your identity, or let it become your teacher. The mind loves loops. Break them. Here's how suffering takes hold. You think, why did they do this to me? Maybe if I had just what if they never cared? Do they even feel guilty? You spiral over and over. And the worst part, they're living their life while you're imprisoned by thoughts of them. This is where Stoicism becomes your sword. A Stoic doesn't fight reality. He accepts what is and redirects his energy toward what he can control. You can't control what they did, but you can control what thoughts you feed, because every thought you nurture becomes a belief, and every belief becomes your identity. Are you going to be the one who was hurt or the one who rose wiser, stronger? Untouchable psychological resilience is built through friction. Think of your mind as a muscle. The people who hurt you, they're the weights. And just like training in the gym, growth only happens under resistance. Every betrayal teaches you where your boundaries are too soft. Every disappointment sharpens your discernment. Every silence from them an opportunity to practice spiritual discipline and not chase validation. It doesn't mean you deserve the pain. It means you refuse to let it be wasted. Resilience isn't built by avoiding hardship. It's built by meeting hardship without losing who you are. That's what makes a high-performance mindset. You don't crumble under chaos. You calibrate. Stop asking why. Start asking what now. There's a question that changes everything. Instead of asking why did they hurt me, ask what do I do with this pain now? What lesson am I supposed to extract? What version of me is being born from this fire? The Stoic doesn't dwell on the why. He takes responsibility for the what next. You don't heal by understanding them. You heal by understanding yourself. What did you tolerate that you shouldn't have? What red flags did you excuse? What did this pain reveal about your own emotional thresholds? This is emotional intelligence at its finest, turning reflection into rebirth. Don't waste a good wound. Pain is a teacher, but only if you listen. And the lesson is simple. Life owes you nothing, but you owe it your strength. Most people waste their wounds. They bleed, then they bleed on others. Then they carry that wound into the next chapter, the next person, the next mirror. Don't do that. Let the pain end with you. Every time you feel the sting, whisper to yourself, this is not punishment. This is preparation. Preparation for a Keta mind. For clear boundaries, for a soul that cannot be swayed by cheap words or fleeting attention. So yes, pain is inevitable. But suffering, that's the chain you can choose to break today. And when you do, you'll realize you were never the victim. You were the alchemist turning heartbreak into higher ground. Pain is real, but meaning that's entirely up to you. They ghosted you. They betrayed you. They discarded you like you didn't matter. But now comes the part that will either define you or destroy you. The story you tell yourself about what that pain means. Because they didn't just hurt you with their actions. You're hurting yourself now with the narrative you keep repeating. I wasn't good enough. I must have done something wrong. I always get treated like this. This is where your freedom begins. Not in changing what happened, but in changing what you decide it says about your worth. Between stimulus and response is power. Viktor Frankl, a man who survived the Holocaust, once said, between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That's the heart of Stoicism. They betrayed you. That's the stimulus. But now comes your response. And that response determines if this becomes your breakdown or your breakthrough. Self-mastery is the ability to pause in that space, to not let your ego write a story of victimhood, to not let your wounded self assign blame where growth could exist, to not let pain become your personality. They don't control your meaning. You do. You don't need closure. You need clarity. Many people get stuck in emotional limbo waiting for closure. They want the apology, the explanation, the confession that they were right and the other was wrong. But here's the truth. Most people avoid closure as a self-diverted gift. And if you need them to explain why they hurt you, they still own part of your mind. What you need isn't their words. It's your clarity. What was this pain trying to reveal about your blind spots? What weakness in your boundaries did it expose? What self-worth wound did it reopen? When you stop chasing closure and start seeking clarity, you regain your power. You stop being the wounded. You become the watcher not of their actions, but of your own evolution. Meaning is made, not given. The ancient Stoics didn't believe in predetermined meaning. They believed that meaning is made forged in the fire of reflection and reason. Your betrayal doesn't have to mean you're unworthy. Your abandonment doesn't have to mean you're unlovable. Your rejection doesn't have to mean you're disposable. It can mean you've outgrown the smallness others were comfortable keeping you in. It can mean your standards are rising. It can mean you were never meant to stay in a place where your soul was suffocating. That's the power of spiritual discipline, to assign meaning that elevates, not imprisons. Rewrite the narrative. Here's an exercise used in Stoic journaling. 1. Write the pain down exactly as it happened. Don't filter it. Be brutally honest. 2. Next, write down what you've been telling yourself that pain means the story. 3. Then write a new interpretation, one rooted in growth, strength, and clarity. For example, they left me when I needed them most. I must not be enough. New narrative. I now see their departure as redirection. I was never meant to stay dependent on those who can't even show up for themselves. They humiliated me publicly. I'm weak and exposed. New narrative. Their cruelty revealed their character and taught me how much strength it takes to stay calm when publicly tested. They betrayed me. I'll never trust again. New narrative. This was a test of discernment, not a condemnation of trust, but an invitation to trust better, wiser, and with stronger boundaries. Every time you rewrite the meaning, you reclaim a piece of your inner power. You are the author. Now, the most dangerous thing you can do is let someone who doesn't value you become the editor of your self-worth. Don't hand over the pen of your life to people who only know how to write in disappointment. You are the author now. Write something worthy, something true, something that reflects your strength, not your scars. Because the story you tell yourself after the hurt is far more important than the one that led to it. And that's what makes you unstoppable. Not because you didn't get hurt, but because you rose to meet the pain with meaning that liberated you instead of limiting you. Let's be honest. When someone hurts you, the first thing your ego screams is, they don't get to get away with this. They need to feel what they made me feel. I want them to hurt too. That's the mind seeking balance, but through the wrong door. Because revenge doesn't restore your peace. It feeds your pain. And most dangerously of all, it keeps you energetically entangled with people you were born to outgrow. Boundaries are the Stoic form of justice. You don't need to burn their house down. You don't need to expose them, outsmart them, or make them regret it. You need only to do one thing. Set a psychological boundary so unshakable they no longer have access to your peace. In Stoic thought, justice is not about external punishment. It's about internal order. When someone wrongs you, the highest response is not vengeance. It's self-regulation. It's saying, I see clearly what you are, and I no longer allow you to distort who I am. This is emotional intelligence. Not exploding, not imploding. Just choosing to no longer participate in the chaos. Because the truth is, you don't win by fighting fire with fire. You win by becoming the one who no longer reacts to flames at all. Boundaries are not walls, they are gates. Many people confuse boundaries with emotional shutdown. They think setting boundaries means cutting everyone off, becoming cold, suspicious, or paranoid. But true boundaries, Stoic boundaries, come from clarity, not fear. A wall keeps everyone out. A gate decides who enters, when and under what conditions. That's what boundaries are: conscious, deliberate filters for what enters your emotional world. You don't owe everyone access. You don't owe everyone explanations. You don't owe anyone the right to hurt you twice. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Marcus Aurelius. And the fastest way to darken the soul is to let boundaryless relationships keep staining it with disrespect. How to set boundaries without guilt. This is where most kind-hearted people struggle. They feel bad saying no. They feel selfish when pulling away. They feel guilty when choosing themselves. But understand this, it is not selfish to protect your peace. It is sacred. If someone makes you feel like protecting your space is too much, they were counting on you, never developing the courage to do it. You don't need to justify your boundary. Your discomfort is the justification. Your self-worth is the reason. Start small. Don't explain everything. Don't answer right away. Don't keep the door open for people who only bring storms. Every time you choose to honor your boundary, you reinforce your spiritual discipline. You train your mind that you are worthy of calm, of clarity, of respect. Watch how they react. That's the real them. A boundary reveals more about a person than any conversation ever could. Watch what happens when you finally say, "That's not okay with me. I won't tolerate that again. This conversation is over. I'm not available for this dynamic anymore." If they get angry, defensive, guilt trip you, or suddenly turn cold, they were never connected to you. They were attached to what they could extract. Let that sink in. Some people don't love you. They love the version of you that had no boundaries. And when you grow, they lose control. Let them, because their reaction is not your responsibility. Your peace is the silent boundary detachment. Sometimes the most powerful boundary is no longer being emotionally available for their chaos. You don't argue. You don't explain. You simply stop engaging. It's not cold. It's calm. It's not hate. It's healing. It's not revenge. It's release. When you stop responding to the bait, they can no longer fish for your pain, and slowly your soul begins to breathe again. You start to feel that quiet dignity, the kind that comes from choosing self-mastery over self-destruction. This is what Stoics have always taught. No man is free who is not master of himself. Epictetus, let that boundary be your liberation, not because they changed, but because you changed the rules of access. When you set boundaries instead of seeking revenge, you reclaim your time, your mind, your energy, and most importantly, your power, not to destroy them, but to rebuild you. There is a kind of strength that doesn't shout. It doesn't retaliate. It doesn't make dramatic exits or loud threats. It simply walks away silently, calmly, completely. That is not weakness. That is inner peace. And in a world that runs on noise, validation, and drama, nothing is more powerful than being unbothered. The ultimate power is peace. Most people think power is about control. Control over others, over outcomes, over how you're perceived. But the Stoics knew a deeper truth. The highest power is not in controlling others. It's in not being controlled by them. And that's exactly what peace gives you. Peace is not passivity. Peace is presence. The ability to stay grounded, centered, and clear even while chaos storms around you. When someone hurts you, they're not just testing your emotions, they're testing your discipline. Do you react immediately? Do you spiral into self-doubt? Do you let your anger write your next chapter? Or do you pause, breathe, and respond with the calm of someone who knows? No one gets to pull me out of alignment unless I allow it. That's emotional intelligence. That's self-mastery. Chao loves a reaction. Don't feed it. There's a reason toxic people hate your silence. They can't feed off it. They want your outrage. They want your breakdown. They want your emotional energy because it makes them feel significant. When you respond with peace, it starves their ego. It ends the cycle. And more importantly, it protects your mental clarity because every time you engage in drama, you pay with your energy. Every reply is an investment in someone else's dysfunction. Why give your focus to people who've already shown they can't handle your heart? Your silence doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're done auditioning for someone who doesn't deserve your presence. Peace is earned through practice. Peace isn't a switch you flip. It's a muscle you build. You cultivate peace when you step away instead of snapping back. Say less instead of explaining more. Breathe through the urge to defend, observe without reacting. The Stoics trained their minds daily to anticipate hardship, so that when insult, injury, or betrayal came, they weren't surprised. They were ready. You're not weak for feeling angry. You're human, but the power lies in not being owned by that anger. Let it pass through you. Let it teach you. Then let it go. This is spiritual discipline in its purest form. Choosing your higher self over your triggered self. Guard your energy like it's sacred because it is. Not everyone deserves access to your peace. Not every message deserves a reply. Not every battle is yours to fight. Your psychological boundaries are the gates to your sanctuary. Start treating your attention like a precious resource because it is. Would you let someone walk into your home and trash it? No, then why let them do it to your mind? It's not that life is short. It's that we waste much of it. Seneca. Wasting your peace on people who don't even value your voice, that's spiritual bankruptcy. And once you realize that peace is the ultimate currency, you stop spending it recklessly. You become intentional, deliberate, stoic. Your calm is what destroys them. When someone has hurt you and expects you to fall apart, your calm becomes terrifying. When they expect retaliation, your silence becomes confusing. When they expect drama, your detachment becomes unnerving. When they expect you to fight, your peace becomes power. You want to shake their world. Don't argue. Don't chase. Don't explain. Win in silence. Win by outgrowing. Win by becoming so grounded that they can no longer touch you. That's the Stoic way. Not because you're suppressing emotion, but because you're channeling it wisely, maturely, strategically. You don't prove your worth through war. You prove it through peace. Peace that you earned. Peace that you protect at all costs. There's a dangerous myth we've all been fed. If you truly forgive someone, you must welcome them back. Wrong. Forgiveness is a release, not a reunion. It's about your freedom, not their redemption. You don't forgive people so they can feel better. You forgive so you can heal without carrying the weight of resentment. That's not weakness. That's emotional intelligence. And in the philosophy of Stoicism, there is nothing more powerful than cutting the chain that ties your soul to someone else's poison and walking away for good. Forgiveness is for the strong-weak. People hold grudges because they're too fragile to face the wound. They hide behind anger because pain is harder to admit. But Stoics, they look directly at the pain and say, "This happened. I accept it, but I refuse to let it define me." Forgiveness is not letting them off the hook. It's unhooking yourself from their drama. When you hold on to anger, you're dragging their presence into every room you enter. They've already hurt you once. Don't give them the power to keep doing it from a distance. He who angers you conquers you. Elizabeth Kenny, think about that. If the mention of their name still controls your mood, you haven't escaped them, you've imprisoned yourself. And the key, it's called forgiveness. But forgiveness doesn't mean access. Let's be clear. You can forgive someone and still never trust them again. You can release the bitterness in your heart and still block their number. You can rise above the drama and still set the boundary. Forgiveness says, "I release this pain." Boundaries say, "You will not cause it again." Both are necessary. Both are powerful. Together they become your spiritual armor. The Stoics never taught us to become emotional doormats. They taught us to lead with wisdom and discipline. Forgiveness without boundaries is emotional naivety. Boundaries without forgiveness is emotional baggage. You need both. You forgive for your inner peace. You set boundaries for your self-worth. Rebuilding trust is not the same as rebuilding contact. Some people mistake forgiveness as an open door. They show up after the apology expecting things to go back to how they were. They want your presence without earning back your trust. But remember this. You are not obligated to keep people in your life just because you've forgiven them. Trust is not automatic. It is earned. And if someone broke it, it's not your job to speed up their healing arc. You are not required to entertain a repeat performance of the same pain. In fact, that would be a betrayal of your own growth. Forgiveness is peaceful closure, not emotional amnesia. You're allowed to remember. You're allowed to protect your space. You're allowed to never go back. That's not spite. That's psychological maturity. Let go for you, not them. Forgiveness is not a performance. You don't need to announce it. You don't need them to understand it. You don't even need them to apologize. You forgive for your evolution, not their ego. Sometimes the apology never comes. Sometimes they still blame you. Sometimes they rewrite the story so they can sleep at night. Let them. You're not forgiving to fix the past. You're forgiving to protect your future. Your peace matters more than their explanation. Your growth matters more than their guilt. And every moment you spend waiting for them to make it right is a moment you're not building the life they'll never get to be part of again. Your freedom is on the other side of release. When you finally say, "I forgive you, but I'm done. I've let it go and I'm moving forward. I wish you peace from a distance." That's when you reclaim your power, not because they changed, but because you did. Forgiveness isn't about rewriting the story. It's about choosing a new one where you are no longer the victim. But the author, this is what spiritual discipline truly means. To master your emotions, to preserve your energy, to stay rooted in who you are, no matter how deeply you were hurt. When you forgive and still never let the pain return, you don't just heal, you evolve. There's a difference between walking away in peace and storming out in rage. There's a difference between letting go and throwing away parts of yourself in the process. The Stoics were never about coldness. They were about clarity. And when someone has hurt you, betrayed you, or used you, you don't need to destroy them to win. You simply need to detach with dignity, with poise, with full control of your energy. What detachment is and what it's not. Detachment isn't apathy. It's not pretending you don't care. It's not bottling everything up and pretending nothing happened. Detachment is a spiritual discipline. It's the ability to step back without losing your integrity, to remove yourself from chaos without becoming bitter, to stop showing up for people who never showed up for you without feeling guilt. He who angers you owns you, but he who you can't emotionally detach from owns you even more. The goal is not to teach them a lesson. The goal is to teach yourself self-respect. Letting go of someone who hurts you is not cruelty, it's clarity. Dignified detachment is quiet. Strategic final. A narcissist wants drama. A manipulator wants a scene. Toxic people want you reactive so they feel significant. But when you detach with dignity, you rob them of everything they crave. No fight to win, no emotion to exploit, no validation to feed their ego. You don't scream. You don't beg. You don't post cryptic quotes online hoping they'll read it. You just go quietly, completely without explanation. That silence, it's louder than anything you could have said. That distance, it's healing. That grace, it's power. Because in that moment, you're not reacting from emotion. You're moving from consciousness. The strongest boundaries are often invisible. You don't have to block someone to detach. You don't need a dramatic announcement to reclaim your peace. True psychological boundaries are internal. They sound like I don't owe them closure. They don't get access to this version of me. I see them clearly now, and that's enough. You no longer try to prove anything. You no longer explain what they refuse to understand. You've detached not because you hate them, but because you finally value yourself enough not to stay. That's emotional intelligence. That's high-performance mindset. That's self-worth in action. Let go without needing them to notice. Detachment loses its power the moment you start hoping they'll notice. If you're walking away hoping they'll miss you, regret it, or come chasing you, haven't detached. You're just performing a role, still attached to the outcome. But when you detach with dignity, you don't need them to notice your silence because you're no longer doing it for them. You're doing it for you. And that's what breaks the cycle for good. It's not the silence that destroys them. It's the fact that you found peace and they no longer matter in it. They can't touch you where you've gone. They can't reach the version of you that grew beyond needing their approval. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is outgrow everything that once broke you. That's Stoic detachment. It's not a reaction. It's a rebirth. Detachment is the end of their power over you, when you no longer react to the person who hurt you, when you no longer justify, chase, prove, or explain you've already won. Because detachment is not about the other person changing. It's about you transforming. You don't wish them harm, but you no longer wish to participate in their narrative. You're no longer the emotional hostage. You've cut the rope and taken your power back. That's not bitterness. That's not revenge. That's freedom. Detachment with dignity is not about denying your emotions. It's about honoring them in silence. It's about choosing your inner peace over temporary satisfaction and walking away like someone who knows you're not abandoning them. You're returning to yourself. What if the most powerful thing you could do was to heal quietly? No updates, no announcements, no need to show them what they lost. Just growth, silent, relentless, unstoppable. That's not weakness. That's self-mastery. Because when you stop trying to prove a point and instead become the point, you rise. Revenge is loud. Evolution is silent. Most people want revenge. They want the ones who hurt them to suffer, to beg, to realize what they've done. But that's still attachment. Still seeking their recognition, still waiting for validation from the person who invalidated you. And that is the trap. True healing begins the moment you realize you don't need them to regret it. You just need to outgrow it. Because the best revenge is not revenge at all. It's rebuilding yourself so powerfully, they no longer exist in your story. Not as a villain, not as a memory, not even as a lesson. Just gone like a chapter you've outlived. Let the silence speak. In Stoicism, silence is not passivity. It is strategy. You don't speak just to be heard. You act and let your actions echo louder than any explanation ever could. They said you wouldn't recover. You did in silence. They thought you'd fall apart. You rebuilt without a word. They never apologized. You never needed it because your life is no longer about them. It's about who you're becoming now that they're no longer in the way. Growth is the storm they never saw coming. And silence is the proof you've left their world completely. That's emotional intelligence. That's spiritual discipline. You don't need closure. You need clarity. Many people stay stuck in cycles of pain because they're still waiting for closure. But here's the Stoic truth. You don't need their closure. You need your own clarity. Clarity that says, I was hurt, but I am not broken. I was used, but I am not worthless. I was dismissed, but I am not invisible. Your self-worth doesn't live in their recognition. It lives in your decision to rise anyway. They don't need to understand your pain. They don't even need to see your healing because you see it. You feel it. You own it. And that's all that matters. High-performance mindset. Focus on you. You will never become unstoppable by looking backward. You don't conquer your future by obsessing over your past. You do it by locking in, by channeling your pain into progress, by building yourself for yourself. The Stoics didn't seek revenge. They sought excellence because excellence is unarguable. You don't need to make a scene. You need to make a shift from wounded to wise, from broken to bold, from victim to victor. Let them doubt. Let them talk. Let them forget. Just don't let you stop. That's the mindset of someone who understands. I don't need to defeat them. I just need to become someone they could never touch again. That's psychological transformation. Rise so high they can't recognize you. You're not here to impress the people who hurt you. You're here to become so elevated that even you wouldn't recognize the old version they destroyed. Let your work speak. Let your peace radiate. Let your life, the one they don't get to be part of anymore, be the proof of your healing. No bitterness, no blame, just keta. Steady, unstoppable evolution. You don't grow for applause. You grow because you refuse to stay small. And one day they may look at you from a distance and realize they lost something remarkable. But by then you won't even notice. You'll be too focused on becoming everything they tried to break. You don't need to burn bridges. You don't need to scream, block, or perform. You just need to walk away and build a life so solid, so sacred, so strong, that no storm from your past could ever shake it again. That is Stoic power. That is your new path. They may never apologize. They may never admit what they did. They may walk around acting like nothing happened, as if your pain was a footnote, not a wound. But here's the truth. The Stoics knew long before psychology caught up. You don't need them to validate your pain, to heal from it. You don't need them to recognize your worth, to reclaim it. You win the moment their acknowledgement becomes irrelevant. Why their apology doesn't matter anymore. Waiting for closure is like standing in the rain holding a key to a door that's already locked from the inside. You're not healing, you're hoping. But hope in the wrong direction is just another form of bondage. It keeps you tied to the very people who showed you no loyalty, no empathy, no emotional accountability, and the Stoic response. Let it go. Not because it doesn't matter, but because you matter more. You matter more than their remorse. You matter more than their ego games. You matter more than their ability or inability to make peace with what they did when you choose to walk in your own truth, regardless of theirs. That's the beginning of emotional freedom. Emotional intelligence. You don't chase what broke you. The most intelligent response to emotional injury is not to seek revenge. It's not even to seek understanding. It's to elevate your self-worth so profoundly, you no longer measure yourself by the standards of people who couldn't even treat you with basic decency. That's emotional intelligence. That's maturity. Because when someone hurts you and denies it, that's not a reflection of your value. It's a reflection of their emotional cowardice. And when you stop chasing answers from the emotionally immature, you win. Not externally, not theatrically, but internally, silently, powerfully, irreversibly. Psychological boundaries. You no longer need them to understand. You don't need to tell your story one more time. You don't need to convince anyone of what happened. You don't need to rehearse your pain hoping one day they'll get it. Because here's the reality. Some people will never admit what they did. Some people will rewrite history to protect their image. Some people will act like you're the problem for not letting it go. And the only way to win is to stop playing that game entirely. Set a boundary not around them, but within you. A boundary that says, I know what happened. I know what I felt, and I don't need your permission to honor that truth. That is psychological sovereignty. That is inner power. High-performance mindset. Focus on becoming, not proving. The more energy you spend trying to get them to see you, the less energy you have to build the version of you that doesn't need to be seen. You can't hold your future hostage waiting for your past to give you permission. So stop proving. Start becoming. Become so focused on growth, healing, and peace they fade into irrelevance. Become so committed to excellence, self-respect, and inner strength, you forget you ever needed their validation in the first place. That's the high-performance mindset. Not driven by ego, but anchored in purpose. You don't rise to impress them. You rise because staying low no longer fits who you are becoming. You win the moment they lose access to your energy. When someone who hurt you can no longer reach you. Not physically, not emotionally, not spiritually. You've already won. When they no longer have the power to trigger you, shake you, or occupy your mind rent-free, you've already reclaimed control. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to prove anything. You don't even need them to notice because you're not doing it for them. You're doing it for you. And that right there is the deepest form of victory. Your greatest revenge is to walk away and never look back. Not because you're petty, but because you finally realized you're free. You don't need their approval. You don't need their apology. You don't need their permission to rise because everything you need was never in them. It was always in you. And now you know that you don't need to clap back. You don't need to explain your silence. You don't even need them to know you're doing better. Your peace speaks louder than any speech ever could. That's what they never expected. That you'd rise without the noise. That you'd win without the war. That you'd choose serenity over revenge and become untouchable. Because in a world obsessed with being heard, the calm one commands the room. Peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's mastery over it. The Stoics never promised a life free from pain or betrayal. What they taught was something even more powerful. You cannot control what others do, only how you respond. And the highest response, not reaction, not retaliation, but peace. A peace so deep it disarms chaos. A calm so solid it confuses anyone still spinning in drama. You no longer carry the burden to be understood. You no longer need the last word because you've mastered the only thing that truly matters, yourself. That's self-mastery. That's psychological invincibility. Emotional intelligence protecting your frequency. When you stop engaging with those who drain you, mock you, manipulate you, you're not being cold, you're being wise. Because not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Not everyone is safe for your nervous system. Not everyone should be allowed near your peace. This isn't arrogance. It's emotional intelligence. You are no longer available for chaos. No longer accessible to disrespect. No longer reactive to people who never had the maturity to handle your presence in the first place. And when they realize that, they feel it. Even if they never say it, you win by no longer playing the game. They expected you to argue, to chase, to spiral, but instead you sat still. You healed. You got better. And you never looked back. You didn't announce your transformation. You became it. You didn't tell them they lost something valuable. You let them realize it in their own time or never at all. Because true strength doesn't shout, it radiates. And when your life radiates clarity, peace, confidence, and discipline, no lie, no narrative, no projection can touch you anymore. You don't need closure. You don't need revenge. You don't even need justice. You just need to move on and stay moved. That's Stoic victory. Peace as your power play. Let them talk. Let them question. Let them wonder. Your silence will say more than anger ever could. Because silence is not weakness. It's strategy. Peace is not giving up. It's leveling up. It's the ultimate proof that you've chosen you. Not in ego, but in wisdom. Because when you truly understand your worth, you don't beg for closure. You become the closure. When you truly embody self-respect, you don't chase peace, you carry it. And that's when they realize they've lost access to something divine. The final word is no word at all. You are no longer triggered. You are no longer performing for approval. You are no longer fighting invisible battles because your soul is calm. Your boundaries are firm. Your focus is locked in. And that is the final word. The unspoken power, the inner fire no one sees but everyone feels. You don't need them to clap. You don't need them to change. You don't even need them to remember because the version of you that endured them no longer exists. And the version standing here now unbothered, unavailable, unshakable. Let your stillness shake the ground they walk on. Let your calm confuse the chaos they live in. Let your peace be the echo they never escape. That's not just healing. That's transformation. That's the Stoic way. So if they hurt you and walked away like it meant nothing, let them pretend. Let them rewrite the story. Let them underestimate the silence you now wear like armor because you are no longer the same. You're not angry. You're aware. You're not bitter. You're better. You're not seeking justice. You've become the justice. This is the power they never saw coming. A calm mind, a clear soul, and a future they'll never be part of. And you didn't need revenge. You didn't need to prove them wrong. You just needed to rise without noise and let your evolution echo louder than anything they could say. That's not just healing. That's Stoicism. That's you reclaiming your power without lifting a sword. So if this message spoke to your soul, if you're walking this quiet path of clarity and strength, subscribe because this is where you belong.